The Charleston School Board gives the approval to make security upgrades to buildings in the district. The changes have been in the works for more than a year after the high school received a false threat. Coming up, we'll talk about what improvements will be made during an interview with Charleston School Superintendent Jim Littleford. Stay with us. At Issue starts now. Welcome and thanks for joining us for At Issue. I'm your host, Kelly Runyon. The Charleston School Board has finalized plans to improve security in the district. Now, while security is always on the minds of school officials, additional upgrades became critical after the high school back in February of 2012 received a false threat a gunman was on school property. And then, of course, the shooting at an elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut. Charleston's crisis prevention team has looked at a number of improvements, some put into place already, while others took a bit more planning and funding. We thank Charleston School Superintendent Jim Littleford for joining us today to talk about the changes. Now, as I mentioned, security improvements have long been talked about in the school district. This is not a new topic, but the threat back in February of 2012 made the situation a bit more urgent. Can you take us back to that day in February and what happened and what the school went through on that day?
I sure can, Kelly. Let me back up just a little bit further than that. I came to the school district in 2008, and when I came to the school district, about every door in our school buildings throughout the district was open. You could come in just about anywhere, and immediately some red flags went up for me. Because I'd come from districts where we'd done comprehensive security planning, and I was a little bit concerned, particularly being in a university town and all the visitors that come to town and that type of thing. So between 2008-9 school year and up until the instant that we had the high school in February of 2012, we did some things, and we did them relatively quietly, but we began to put some things in place where we locked down the buildings. We went to magnetic door locks at the front entrances with camera buzz-in systems and that type of thing where secretaries could at least look and see who they were dealing with and if there were any issues out there. And so that has served us pretty well up until the 2012 incident. That particular day was I think, an eye-opener for not only us, but I think the community as well, because we had a report of a gunman on our high school campus. And then later on during the day, around noon or slightly before, we had the same report come in again that we had to deal with, and eventually it led to catching a person and dealing with that individual. So, and of course there was no gun on campus that particular day, but the threat was real and very well could just have been somebody with a gun on our campus. So, you know, as we began to look at Charleston High School, we began to realize that we were dealing with a building that was built in 1953, 54, somewhere around in there. Obviously, 60 years old. And how do you handle security on something that was much, much different half a century ago? As far as people being able to come into buildings, being able to come into any door or many of the doors throughout the building. We knew that was an issue right off the bat. At the high school, for instance, in addition to some of the main doors, such as the front entrance door on the east side of the building, the two Baker gymnasium doors, the doors just north of the cafeteria and media center, the doors that are in our breezeway, we have 57 other doors that we have to deal with. And so to keep those locked at all times and deal with people trying to come in through those is quite a feat in itself. And we knew that it was going to cost some money to be able to lock that campus down when we needed it locked down. We also had issues dealing with, we have an outside building at the high school. We have our agricultural building is outside. And so we tried to come up with a way that outside of trying to build an entranceway, which would cost a tremendous amount of money between that building and the actual high school building itself, or the main part of that building. What we went to was a type of a system where we could open the doors on the main doors during passing time and then lock them back down. when the bell rang and kids were supposed to be in class and so forth. Realizing that we're going to have kids coming and going throughout the day posed another problem for us. Our parking lot is on the northwest side of the building, and the front entrance is clear over on the east side of the building, and there's no way to get there without walking through grass and that type of thing. So we had to come back and make plans to start to look for some type of a trail or a sidewalk or asphalt type of sidewalk, and we ended up laying asphalt for that. We also knew that in looking at the high school, we had no cameras anywhere. So we had no cameras in the parking lot or parking lots. We had no cameras inside the building should there be issues. And we already had some vandalism out at our Trojan Hill Athletic Complex that we'd had to deal with as far as the concession stands and that type of thing. So we had a lot of things to address in the initial stages of the whole thing. Back to the incident on that February day, that was a really interesting time for us. The morning at the high school began very typically. I was actually out of the district on that particular day, and the phone call initially went from Mrs. Hutchins to Mr. Velardo, the assistant superintendent, who then contacted me. And he went to the high school to see what the status was and to begin to formulate some type of a plan. In the meantime, I had asked him to contact me back so that I would be kept aware of what was transpiring. At a point in the morning around 9 o'clock, 9:15, I made a decision to get back to the school and to help in any way that we could. So that was a very interesting day as we had media come in and they were trying to stage around the building and so forth. Eventually, we ended up using the auditorium once we got the all clear as a staging area for them. But in the meantime, we had news cameras from Decatur and Champaign and Terre Haute, and WEIU was there, and radio stations, and that was an unusual event for us to deal with that kind of media coverage. So that certainly posed some problems for us as well.
When the school gets the call, what plan is put into place? We all have plans. We all have security, processes that we go through, but when it really happens, your mind scrambles.
Right.
So when that call came in, what happened?
Well, Mrs. Hutchins immediately went to a lockdown scenario, and that meant that all teachers were locking doors, and if they had a way to cover their windows, they were covering their windows and that type of thing. They were moving students out of the way of windows. Window shades went down, that type of thing. We were basically trying to isolate them and protect them as much as possible. We had another issue that arose that we really hadn't given a lot of thought to, and that was the use of technology by students. And almost everybody has a cell phone, and we allow students to use the cell phones in between classes and that type of thing, so that they can communicate with whomever they want to. We've tried not to fight that issue at this point in time because it's so prevalent with everybody. And so she immediately went down to a lockdown. The call went out for assistance. We had law enforcement come from many different venues. We had Charleston Police Department, we had county, Coles County was in, we had state, we had other communities bring assistance for us. It was a very comprehensive thing. It was a very real thing, and I think it scared many of our students and our faculty, or at least got their attention very quickly. I know from dealing with parents out in the community how it affected them. And one of the things that we learned was, we put out an announcement probably in the 10:30 range as to what was transpiring. By that point in time, a lot of time had elapsed. One of the things that we've learned is we're going to try and get something out much quicker next time. If it's nothing but to say we've had a threat, we're in a lockdown, just to let parents know so that they realize what's going on and to get away from some of the rumors and that type of thing.
What was learned from that situation? You mentioned a few things. Then the meeting started. We're going to change some things in our district. So let's talk about what was learned and then the process that began after that incident.
Probably one of the things that we learned was that we did a pretty good job. And I will certainly defend us. I really think Mrs. Hutchins and our high school staff did a very nice job of locking down, getting our students out of the way, covering windows, putting down shades. You know, that was probably the thing that impressed me the most, was how serious they did it, how quickly they did it. You know, as we talked about a little bit earlier, you know, there were a few things that we wished we had done perhaps a little bit differently. One is to get the word out a little bit quicker, and just to make a blanket announcement through our SkyAlert system, and to let all of our parents know and our staff know that, hey, this is a situation that we're in. Everybody at this point is safe. There's been no shots fired, but we've got reports of an armed intruder and that type of thing. So most definitely, we want to try and get something out just a little bit quicker. It won't be instantaneous, but as soon as we know what's going on, and we know that it's a real threat, that type of thing. So, you know, another thing was, you know, we have to make sure that our other schools are aware as well. And we'll talk about something here a little bit later in the show about having the capabilities of getting that information out to other schools that are within walking distance. And when you look at the high school, for instance, we've got Mark Twain, which is a kindergarten facility that's just a few hundred yards away. We've got the middle school, 7th and 8th grade facility that's even closer. It seems closer than that, and it's highly, it's very much integrated with our high school. And you know, bus pickup, everybody comes together and that type of thing. So, you know, we have to make sure that our other schools are alerted as well.
Did the crisis prevention team evolve after this incident?
Really?
Almost immediately?
Well, you know, what we did at that particular time is we began to look at, and we had already done some work, but we began to look at interviewing people within the particular schools, and really we were focusing on the high school at that point in time, and we'd really already started because we'd had some staff members that had expressed some concerns about the high school and the security and so forth. What this did was make sure that we got more people involved. It just wasn't our teachers and our paraprofessionals and our secretaries, but it included our custodians, our maintenance people out in the community, our students, trying to find out what their major concerns were about that campus, because obviously they're around that campus every day and they understand that campus much better than I do. So, you know, we were able to bring a group of people together, get information from them, and then develop a plan as to what we were going to do. And most of the work took place in the summer of 2012. To go fast forward, you know, I still knew that there were some things that I had concerns about. And the Newtown, Connecticut shooting took place, I believe, in December. That really got my attention because for the first time, to my recollection, somebody had really targeted an elementary school. And because typically these are high school, middle school events, but you know, an elementary school was targeted where there was great loss of life to staff and students alike. And I knew that we didn't have some of the things in place at the elementary schools that we had at the high school. And really we didn't have them in place yet at the middle school yet either. So that got our attention. That's really where the crisis prevention team, I asked Mr. Velardo and our Board of Education to let us expand that to include more people. And then from that, recommendations came for things that we're going to do this summer and early in the fall. And those recommendations came to really a safety ad hoc committee. And that ad hoc committee consisted of Kelly Miller and Susan Daniels, board members, myself, Assistant Superintendent Todd Velardo, Director of Maintenance Bill Richardson, technology person Kyle Perry, Jim Kuykendall from our maintenance department. We then came together, looked at the recommendations, and formulated a plan as to what we thought we could do beginning this summer, and started to put a plan into place with the understanding that probably this safety ad hoc committee will probably never go away. It's always going to be in place because once we get these things completed, there's probably additional things that we're going to want to take a look at.
What were the recommendations? What are the plans?
Well, our recommendations are, or the recommendations from the crisis prevention team, we looked very closely at. There was a list of about 7 things on that particular sheet. The things that we had asked them to do was to prioritize. And then we wanted to take a look as a committee to see, did we agree with that? And we did agree with that. The number one priority was to look at our front entrances, to look at possibly reconfiguring the front entrances, or if not reconfiguring, adding additional things such as camera buzz-in systems, magnetic door locks, that type of thing. Another thing that they wanted us to look at was panic buttons for our secretaries. We had installed those at the high school last summer, but now the recommendation was to do them for our secretaries throughout the district. So that was actually the number 2 priority.
Are those wired into the police department?
Those are wired into CCOM 911. Right, and I should preface that most of them are wired into CCOM 911. Mm-hmm. Some of them, depending upon the severity of what's happening in the office area or on the campus, would be wired to administrators or maybe head teachers, that type of thing, or lead teachers, so that we could have assistance. Because not every crisis involves a gun or massive security. It could be students acting out. It could be parents that are upset, that type of thing, where we just need assistance very quickly in the office. So.
Other plans, security cameras, buzzers on doors, and this was all recently approved.
It was approved yesterday, and so we're thrilled with those things. We have upgraded, or in the process of upgrading, our camera system at Mark Twain and Jefferson School both. When I first got into the district, we had some vandalism, and you might remember we had 3 fires within the school system in 2008-9. One of those was at the high school, and it was an accident. One was at the high school that was set by a student. The other one was at Mark Twain School, and we never found out how that happened, and it involved a fire in a skylight. And we do know that there had been some people that had access to the roof of Mark Twain, because we'd seen them up there, that maybe they'd hopped on an air conditioner and gotten up on the eaves of the roof and crawled up and that type of thing. So back in 2008-9, we put in a camera system. Well, the camera systems now are much more sophisticated, and the clarity of the pictures are so much greater. So we're going to upgrade the camera system at Mark Twain School to the point that we'll be able to see and be able to make out identification on people at night that are on the outside of the building. We really don't have anything on the inside of the building except the front entrance currently. We're also going to put, because we've had vandalism at Trojan Hill, we're going to put a camera it will pan the area for the softball, the baseball, the soccer areas. In addition to that, we're going to put a couple of cameras at Trojan Hill, the football complex, where we'd be able to see the concession stand area, maybe the bleachers, that type of thing. So anybody that might be wanting to write on the walls of the concession stand or break into the concession stand, we'd have a clear picture of that. So hopefully those will stop our vandalism issues that we've got going on at the Trojan Hill complex as well. Then we started to look at Jefferson Elementary School, which is our 4th through 6th grade building. We've had cameras in there for quite some time. Once again, it's an antiquated system. We're going to upgrade that system and make it so that we can see more clearly throughout the building and on the outside of the building and so forth. And because part of that building was built, from the records that I've got, say 1898. And so you've got like 3 or 4 sections of that building that were built on. It's kind of configured, it almost looks like a Monopoly or a dominoes game, the way that it's laid out. So we do have some cameras for that. We're going to upgrade that system so that we can see much better there. We also have an issue because of the configuration at Jefferson. The office area is in that old part of the building. Now, whether it's 1898 or 1918, I'm not sure because they've got documentation for both that says both on that. But the way that it was built, and if you remember, up until a few years ago, everybody was encouraged to come into the school buildings. When you initially come into Jefferson, the front entrance, you have to make a decision. You go upstairs to the offices, or you can go downstairs to the classrooms or additional classrooms. What we're going to do there, and we currently had installed a magnetic door lock on the front with a buzz-in camera system that our secretaries, our two secretaries in the office could look at, see the people, buzz them in, or not let them in. We're going to open up that front door. We're going to take that buzzer system off of that and magnetic door lock, and we're going to move it up to the landing area, the top landing area that goes immediately to the office area. And so we have a set of doors there. We'll put the magnetic door lock on there. We'll put the camera buzz-in system there so that secretaries can look at the monitor on their desk and see who's there. They can also see people from their desk areas, which was really advantageous because now I can turn and I can just look and see who's at the door. We still then have the issue of what to do because people can go downstairs and we wouldn't even know whether they came in the building or not, the way it's configured. We're going to lock the doors at the bottom of that landing with a camera, so the only way that you could get in would be if the doors were actually open from the inside. And then we're going to have to train our students, not to let people in. If people are knocking on the door, they're going to have to go upstairs, and we're going to put a camera down there that the secretaries can see. Because of the makeup of the front entrance of that building, we had to do something like this rather than try and build a wall and funnel people into the office, because that restricts the flow to the nurse's office and to the counselor's office and to classrooms and that type of thing. So just the configuration of a building that's a century old, posed some challenges for us.
Mm-hmm. In the last few minutes, Jim, there may be some parents saying, we're glad that this is happening mm-hmm. and going to happen, but why didn't it happen a year and a half ago, after the high school incident or after Newtown? Immediacy is probably what right. they're thinking, and maybe you can answer
sure,
that.
I think so. We did some things at the high school. Well, we spent probably hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably in the $700,000-800,000 range on security at the high school last summer. It also included some things at the middle school. We tried to do some things and tweak them as best we could. We knew that the high school at that point was probably our main focus because of the number of doors and the kids are coming and going all day long. You've got classes that take place off campus, such as Health Hawk out at Sarah Bush Lincoln, and you've got kids that are driving now and they're going to doctor's appointments and coming back and that type of thing. So, we felt like the focus at that time was the high school, plus the fact we'd already started on that, and so we were well into that at that point in time, making some adjustments. We already had the locks, the magnetic door locks at the elementary schools for the most part. It just involved some tweaking we felt, in those particular areas. The main portion for us was at Jefferson School because we hadn't done anything at that point in time with Jefferson on the front entrance. Its entrance was wide open. You could come in at any point in time. So last summer we focused at the high school. We focused at Jefferson. Now we're going to try and focus a little bit in all the buildings and try and upgrade what it is that we can do. We know, Kelly, that if somebody wants to get into a school building bad enough, they can get into a school building. And there's certainly ways to go about doing that. We want to be and provide as much protection for our students and our staff as we possibly can. Sometimes that just means slowing people down, the bad people that want to get in, making it more difficult for them so that we can get response teams there. That was the purpose in putting in the panic buttons. Being able, so a secretary knows what's going on, that she knows there's an issue, she hits the panic button, hey, those calls have gone out. We think the response time is going to be very, very quick to our buildings as we have worked with our police department.
We have about a minute left, and I do
okay.
want to ask you this because you're a parent.
Yes.
So let's step out of the role as superintendent
Absolutely.
And role as parent. Do you feel good about what's being done in Charleston to protect your children?
Now I do. I didn't 4 or 5 years ago, but now I feel very good about it. I also feel good from the standpoint is this is going to continue, and we're going to continue the Safety Ad Hoc Committee to look at things as what is it that we need to do now? Do we need to look at things such as bulletproof glass in places. Is there strategic areas that we need to look at, shoring up windows, making sure that the people can't get and have access to windows to get into buildings, looking at doors that might need replaced. That maybe, you know how doors are in buildings, sometimes they'll shut, sometimes they won't. And making sure that those doors are shut and locked at all times so that when we force people through the front entrances, we know that that's where they have to go. So.
Well, thank you for the conversation today. I know it's a topic and we could probably keep going, and we may in the future, because as you said, this is an evolving topic.
It is, and thank you very much for having me today, and I'll look forward to letting you know where we're at in the future, and maybe in the fall when we get some of these things done, how things are working out.
Great, thank you. And if there's a topic you'd like discussed here on At Issue, contact us at WEIU@WEIU.net. You can also catch this episode on our YouTube page at youtube.com/WEIU-TV. I'm your host, Kelly Runyon. Be sure to join us again next week for At Issue.